All right, as the lady told us, the recording has started. And so this is the September 9th, 2021 Crossplane community meeting. We had the most recent update is the 1.4 release that went out just about a week or so ago. So we will dive into some details on that. We'll talk about the upcoming 1.5 release, which we are just starting on the early phases of that release cycle. And milestone planning and things like that. And then a lot of updates on providers that have been released recently or about to be released as well too. So a bunch of things to jump into, and feel free, folks, to hop in and interrupt at any time if you want some clarification or you want to hear get a question answered. This is definitely a dialogue for everybody to join in on here, so feel free to jump in whenever you want to. We can also start too with anybody who is new to the meeting here. If you want to unmute yourself and introduce yourself to us, you are more than welcome to as well. So I will take a quick pause for anybody who might want to introduce themselves as their first time at the meeting here.
I can just quickly introduce myself. Hi, I'm just a user of Crossplane, and I mean, we haven't really used it in production, but I'm looking into Crossplane to manage our cloud resources, and it's a very interesting concept. So I just come here and I wanted to learn more. And yeah, I've always been quite impressed by how you guys manage this releases and this whole kind of also your workflow. So yeah, just hope to get inspired.
Awesome, that's fantastic to hear. Really happy to have you here to collaborate with us here today. And yeah, I definitely wouldn't consider anybody just a user, right? That's what this project is for, is the users of it. So that's a huge part of the community and definitely something that's really valuable. So yeah, really excited to have you join here, and any questions or you want to dig in deeper with us, we're always happy to spend time with folks. So happy to have you all here today. All right, sweet. So let's talk about the 1.4 release that went out, I believe it was after the last community meeting. So I move off, ran this release there and did some interesting automation for generating the release notes. Muafik, do you want to kind of talk about that release process there, some of the highlights from it as well too, and maybe some of your interesting scripting to build out the automated release note generation?
Yeah, sure. So the major theme of this release is actually the composition revision that Nick has implemented. So this will allow, so far the flow was that you've got let's say 10 composite resources that are bound to claims or not bound to any claim. When you change their composition, the changes would be propagated to all of them at once, because we would continuously reconcile and apply them. So with the composition revision, you will have a mechanism to actually roll out the changes gradually. So you might want to have a new composition revision, the change on the composition that will create a new composition revision, just like we have in Kubernetes, I believe it was. Yeah, what was that? API type? Yeah, there was a type I couldn't remember, alternative to deployment. But yeah, that has also a revision. So the same mechanism, you will have a new revision for every change you make on the composition, and then you can choose which XRs use this new revision one by one. I believe by default it's still propagates as one, but if you configure it, it will not do that automatically, and you would be able to choose the latest composition revision only for the specific XRs. And other notable updates are there is a log object that has existed for a long time, and we just bumped it in V1 beta 1 because it hasn't changed and it's working as intended. And there is also the labels and annotations on the composed resources. So before we would so essentially when you patch the whole annotations object, which is a map, the whole object in the managed resource, in the composed resource changes, because we would just like, set the whole map. But with Alper's change, you will be able to like, make additions on the existing labels and annotations with patching. So that, like, enabled some of the, like, community users workflows. And there's the Darwin ARM64 support for new Mac users. So you will be able to, like, build the Crossplane using that architecture. I think it was possible to run it, if I'm not mistaken, but I'm not sure. But now it's like, a first-class citizen in our build pipeline. And another change Alper introduced to patching mechanism is that it's similar in vein with the earlier one, but like this last one, you can actually choose the policy of any patch. So you would be able to say, like, hey, replace the whole object, or, like, merge the two, like, key value pairs, for example. If I'm not mistaken, I think Alper would have more details there. So these are, I believe, like, most notable updates. So the automation script that actually, like, extracts every PR that is merged since the last release and prints them out in this fashion, so that we can, like, capture all of them. Like, before that, it was a manual process, and I think we were missing some of the things. But like, even if we didn't miss, like, it's just really plumbing. So I added a script to upbound build submodule that Crossplane uses. The PR is still open, but that script will be, like, you will be able to use it for any release, for any repository that includes that build submodule. The first candidate was Crossplane, but we'll be able to use it for providers as well.
Nice, nice, Wapik. I think that's super useful and definitely makes, like, the release process easier. So I appreciate your automation innovation there. That I think oftentimes we'll see a lot of innovation come from laziness, which is awesome. I think that drives forward a lot of things.
Yeah.
Awesome. Sweet. So yeah, the 1.4 release is out. Thanks to everybody who was contributing in that release and adding a lot of fixes there. So we've got a lot of PR authors' names in here. Some of those folks are on the call here as well too. So thanks to everybody for another really successful release. And we will turn our sights and our eyes towards the next release, which will be 1.5. So we can kind of start talking about that release 1.5, or sorry, there's going to be a 1.4.1 patch release that's coming out tomorrow. I can't remember off the top of my head, at least, what that's going to include. Could somebody refresh my memory on what 1.4.1 will have?
Yeah, so there was a change at some point that changed the flag of the command line flag of the Crossplane provider, and I believe Daniel had, or yeah, someone from community, I believe, opened the fix for it. Since it's the breaking the interface that people use in Helm parameters, we decided that it would be worth to have a patch release. In addition to that, I am planning to include another fix actually in that patch, which will allow more than certain number of CRDs to be installed. For the context, I will go into details in the next sections, but in its essence, with the TerraJet project, we are able to produce providers from Terraform, and some of them has enormous number of CRDs. For example, TF AWS provider will have 770 CRDs. So right now, package manager is not able to apply all of them because of the limited context deadline. So if it's like as simple as that, I will include that fix into that patch release as well, because it would be safe to just have it there without much risk.
Cool. That sounds great, Mawfik. Thanks for that update on the next 1.4.1 patch. And so we can kind of start talking about 1.5 now. It's still, so as we see here, I put this release date here. That's the 8 weeks since the last release. So I think that's, in accordance with our typical cadence of every 8 weeks doing a release. So October 26th is what we'll be looking at for our next minor release here with 1.5. Let me know if that doesn't work for folks or if we need to make any adjustments, but that should be on cadence there. So that's, I expect that to work okay. As we talked about in the last community meeting, we now have a roadmap board, which shows some of the, the things in progress and what are the priorities for the community as a whole. And this is spanning across releases. So this is not a necessarily a commitment to have these features in the next given release, but it is, hey, these are things that as a community, folks have been asking about, we've identified to be priority. And so these will be things that we think should be, on the upcoming set of releases and, folks to want to be addressing these as well too. So I think this column here should be prioritized with things that we think are pretty important and what we'll be diverting some attention to. And these ones here that are already in progress are things that are more likely to be included within the next release. This is something that's very open to community feedback. Obviously, this is driven by the community at large. And so folks that want to weigh in on, what they want to see in here, what they think is important, please do feel free to speak up, have a voice, and contribute to the roadmap here. I don't know if since we're very early in the release cycle here, we just did 1.4. I don't know if we've got this 1.5 board up to date, but we do have some things that are included in it at least. So these are things we'll be working on in 1.5. We're already making some progress on some of them, it looks like. We're not going to visit every item on the board here, but does anybody want to call out anything of note or anything specific on this board here that we're making progress on as we're working towards our 1.5 release at the end of October?
I mostly just dropped these on right before I wasn't sure if we were populating this at this point. Most of these are probably things that we should discuss more or something like that, and then some are in progress. Is this just for clarification for myself and maybe the whole community? As anything is in progress right on Crossplane, we expect for it to show up on the v1.5 board if it is going to be included in the v1.5 release. Is that right?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me, Dan. Yes, I think that's totally reasonable. Yeah, and people, should feel free to, ping us for getting items onto this board as well. I don't think it's publicly accessible, but I don't think it's publicly editable. So folks that want to add items to it, if like maybe they're picking up a contribution or they're working on a PR, or they want to see something get fixed in a particular release, just let us know in Slack on the dev channel, I suppose would be best for that. And we can talk through that. We can keep this board up to date as a whole community effort.
Cool. Thanks, Jared.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of interesting things on the roadmap. We're just getting started with the 1.5 release. I'll open the floor here for an opportunity for anybody who wants to add their perspective on things that they want to see prioritized or fixes that are interesting for the community. So if anybody wants to add a comment on the upcoming roadmap and 1.5 release, I'll go ahead and pause for anybody to do that now. Okay. Well, if anybody can make those comments known at any time. You can do it asynchronously on Slack as well too. So there's always opportunities to get involved there. All right, so we can move down then to, starting 1.5, 1.4 is out, starting 1.5 for the main Crossplane. Now let's talk about all the providers as well too in focus there. So I know there's going to be a specific focus from the maintainers of some of the major providers over the next few weeks. Muafik, Hassan, Alper. I know that you all will be, and Aaron as well too, I think. you all will be doing a bit of a focus on each one of their providers of ownership there, AWS, GCP, Azure, and getting through some of the PR backlogs and making progress on getting things feedback known and getting things merged and integrated into the provider as well too. So we should have a lot of content and upcoming releases for the providers as well too, as we continue to merge all of that functionality. Any other things of note for that effort from you all that will be spending time as maintainers on those providers?
Yeah, so the reason we're doing this is that there are some lingering PRs and issues in all three big providers because of our recent focus on TerraJet and generating controllers and CRDs for TerraJet based providers. So in this next 3 weeks, we will have one person for each week focused on solely on community work, responding on issues and reviewing all the PRs that we can get to and making an effort to merge them as soon as possible. Yeah.
Yep, that will definitely be appreciated by the community and kind of make some rapid progress on some of the great contributions from everybody into those providers. Muafik, I think that you have a couple of updates next here for some of the code generation and provider coverage stuff. If you want to take all of those too.
Yeah, sure. So the first one is reference resolver generation. So we were planning to do it for TerraJet, but it's generic enough that we can use the all Crossplane providers. So if you click to that link, you will see the PR. The main gist of it is that now you will be able to put only one comment on the field that can reference to another resource. For example, if you have a cluster and it references the VPC ID, you would be able to put a comment on top of that field, and then we will generate the reference resolver functions automatically. So that has been a pain for especially people who use ACK generation pipeline, for them to write the resolvers in complex situations. So this will take some of that work from their workload. It will be essentially automated away completely, covering all cases that at least we have for now. Yeah, so this is for all providers.
And I think this is pretty darn important as well too. I think the ergonomics around this, the ability to the contribution it makes to the Crossplane resource model and the burden it takes off of some of the code generation efforts is really, really huge and allows you to do more interesting scenarios here. So I'm really happy to see this in a generic way across all of the providers. The entire ecosystem here gets a benefit from this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it will be very useful for especially not having to do that for in the PRs, because I remember reviewing many PRs that we were stuck in that step for a few rounds. So that will also ease reviewing those PRs, because it's just less code to review and make sure it works.
Yep, I love it. Cool. Then, Muafik, do you want to get us an update on TerraJet and kind of give a bit of a background as well too? A quick background on that to get everyone up to speed too.
Yeah, definitely. So so we have been working on this TerraJet. I mean, I believe in the last community meeting we announced it, and there's a design doc in Crossplane repo that has been approved about the general structure and architecture of the project. Our main goal is essentially to be able to generate Crossplane providers using existing Terraform providers. And the TerraJet itself is a repository, is a framework of tools that you can use to build your code generation pipeline. So it doesn't have hey, give me that provider repo and I will generate everything. It's more like a framework that you can build your code generation pipeline. So at the end of this week, I believe we have issued some some important milestones in regards to like, making the generated CRDs and controllers XRM compliant. For example, we will be able to do the late initialization, which is an important feature in Crossplane. And with the reference resolver, we will be able to use like strong type references, just like other resources. And like, we are now able to package those providers that have been generated by TerraJet. So like, we're and shoot out to like, Alper and Hassan for like, working on this stuff. It's moving pretty fast. And today I added a README so that like, other people, like it's still not as stable as we would like. It's in very early stages. But if people feel adventurous, I think you can like, now by following this README, you can build your own like, small pipeline that generates a Terraform, a Crossplane provider using the Terraform one. There are some details that will change, breaking changes here. For example, we will probably have a provider TF template repo or a branching provider template so that this packaging stuff is handled for you, because it's just common to all Terraform providers. But yeah, you can like, get started and like, get familiar with the whole structure. So the plan right now is that we would have like provider TF AWS, for example, or provider TF Azure as separate providers from the native ones that call out the SDK of the providers. But since we're like, getting more and more XRM compliant, we will consider actually like, merging the generated CRDs into the native provider repos. So for example, you wouldn't have provider TF AWS as a new provider, but we would just use TerraJet to add missing resources of all missing resources of provider AWS. And then like, one by one, we would like, people would have the support and we would like, convert them to native ones as like, as needed. So yeah, there are lots of things going on there. And you can see the like, rough roadmap. When you click that like roadmap link, you will see issues marked as post alpha. Post alpha doesn't mean like we're over alpha and it's kind of usable, but it's just like, a milestone name. Maybe a bad name. In fact, like, we could have said like, it's alpha and the earlier one like pre-alpha or something. But yeah, these post alpha ones, the ones that you see as assigned, are what we will work in this sprint in the next 2 weeks. And yeah, the other post alpha labeled issues are the ones like we will tackle next. There is also the ones that are labeled as beta, and those ones like, are mostly like, polishing and making it production ready and usable, like, in a more like in an angry way, let's say. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds great. There's been tons of progress on this. Like there's, I'm really impressed with the effort from the full team on getting this up to speed and running here and almost ready for, broader trial and usage of it as well if it's early in its alpha phase. So this is really cool to see, like so many providers, so many resources, all that sort of stuff. There's a lot of progress there, and like the XRM compliance of it is something that I find particularly awesome as well too. Like the experience and the ergonomics around it are going to be really good. Yeah. Great, Muafak. Thank you so much for the update there. So the providers, we're continuing to make progress on, it feels like so many fronts right now, which is really cool. But we're getting some recent releases of providers out. We don't have to go through each one here, but there are links, and we'll go to more details on each provider further below. But there are links here to each one of the releases, the recent releases we've done for Azure, AWS, and GCP. I think that we can kind of talk about each one of the providers in turn here, and then in that context for each provider, folks can feel free to speak up and voice some of their, their needs or requirements for each provider as well too. So let's do that in these questions here in context of each one of the providers that we're about to go through. So let's go through each one here. AWS could be either Aaron or Muafik, and we don't have to click in and go to every single fix and thing that we're focusing on, but the high level updates on each of those providers is perfect to focus on right now.
Yeah, in regards to releases, maybe I can mention why we did a patch release of wider AWS for the last 2 versions. So there was a bug in, well, maybe like it can be considered a bug to some extent. So some of the APIs that AWS exposes are eventually consistent, meaning that after we create them, we are not able to get a faithful response from the describe operation. So Nick has solved this problem on Crossplane runtime level, fixing it like for all resources. And with the test, we saw I think it was like mostly root table and like some EC2 resources that were leaking. Like we would create twice, but we would know only about only one of them. So this PR fixes them, and we did 2 patch releases for the 2 last versions of AWS that includes it. So now we don't have that leaking problem, making it making it work for eventually consistent APIs.
Yeah, I think that was a really good investigation. First, starting with the on the community side, which was really useful to get all that data there, and so that was really helpful. And then Nick diving into this and kind of fixing some what we believe to be some of these root causes, I think will help out the kind of reliability, I guess, in more loaded, stressed situations, but overall improving the reliability and consistency of the providers is something that's really good. So yeah, we did a patch release for 19.1 and 18.2 for AWS for that, because that was what we found to be the most affected, at least. So that Crossplane runtime core fix there will make it into other provider releases as they come in. Any other big updates, Aaron, from you on AWS, or anything you wanted to call out, sir?
No, nothing at this time. I'm relying on Muafik's update, as this week has been devoted to some other projects at Upbound.
Next week, you have a fun week ahead of you as well, too, Aaron.
Oh my.
Aaron's changing zip codes next week.
It's changing time zones next week.
That's a really far away zip code. It's not down the street. All right, sweet. Okay, cool. Then we can go ahead on to GCP as well. Hassan, do you want to get us up to speed with what's going on with provider GCP?
Hassan actually won.
Oh, Hassan's not here.
Yeah, Hassan is not here, so I can go over both. So the listed issues and PRs in both AWS and GCP, especially the ones that are new issues and bugs needing attention in provider GCP. So if anyone is interested in taking them, please say so, because we think there are important bugs that we should work on. And the PRs under provider AWS updates, I think we will be able to get to review them. But if anyone wants to give it an earlier pass, that would be really appreciated. And yeah, I think the provider GCP and provider GCP beta is not something that I'm very familiar with, so maybe Daniel could give an update there.
Yeah, thanks, Muafik. I synced with Hassan on this morning. So for folks that remember about 6 months ago, honestly, at this point, I think it was about that far, we talked about an RFC around breaking into provider GCP and provider GCP beta. And around that time, I went ahead and made some modifications to provider GCP basically to make sure that we're only using stable versions of GCP APIs. Because we found ourselves in a place where we had to pin the like Go SDK version in provider GCP because some types like GK cluster and node pool were based on unstable API versions from the SDK, which meant that we couldn't update the SDK to include new stable features and other resources because we had to keep it pinned because it dropped features in GK cluster and node pool. So obviously we are kind of at an impasse there and needed to make some breaking changes. So those breaking changes have been made. We have a long list of the API changes that happened. And then our strategy was to take what was existing for GK cluster and node pool and go ahead and bootstrap provider GCP beta with those resources. So if you needed that functionality, you could now use provider GCP beta to be able to do that. So we want to release provider GCP and the first version of GCP beta in tandem so that there's not a window where you can't have that functionality. That being said, if you were using GK cluster or node pool and you want to upgrade, there will be some manual steps required, or at least that's the thought right now, unless if Hassan determines an automated way to be able to do this. And that will most likely involve doing something like kube control get the YAML for all of your existing GK clusters, save that, make one minor modification in the group version, install provider GCP beta, and then recreate those and have Crossplane assume control of them. So it's not a super error prone process, but there are some manual breaking changes there. And honestly, that's just been delayed for quite a while. So it's kind of time to do the hard thing or bite the bullet, if you will, on this. So that will be happening next week. And Hassan's going to make sure to exercise the different paths that folks might encounter there.
And just to emphasize as well too, like it is a manual migration step, you know, for this transition here, but it is a non-destructive operation as well though too. So you're, again, Dan kind of mentioned that, but I just wanted to emphasize that you won't lose any resources during that migration at all.
Yes, if you go through the migration properly, that's true. If you try to upgrade, it's going to fail. So we took the approach of, instead of upgrading and saying that, you know, your stuff gets wiped away or features get dropped, we're actually, the upgrade will actually just say like, I can't progress because, you know, of breaking changes here. So if you have it like tagged to master or something like that, then you're going to automatically have it break, which will be a nice feature actually. But if you did try to like force that upgrade, then you could have data loss. So do make sure to go through that migration if you're using the affected resources. If you're just using it for things that aren't GK cluster or node pool, then you can just roll forward and you'll also get the breaking change notification, but you can just delete that CRD and it'll recreate it. So we'll have each of the different kind of like scenarios that you could be in outlined, and then what steps you need to take for those.
Sweet, thanks for that, for the details there, Dan, on the provider GCP upcoming release. Another note we have in here is that provider Kubernetes, there is now an official release version out, the 0.1 release. So this is now, oh sweet, somebody put a heart on it. And, oh, Carl, nice, me too. I also heart this. So yeah, there is now an official release of the provider Kubernetes functionality to manage just generic Kubernetes API objects. So that's out there and ready for some consumption and some adoption as well too. And you know, happy to accept feedback on that. Just open issues in that repo and we can address those. Alper, do you want to give us a quick update about Azure and the release you did for 0.17 last week, I think it was?
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned, last week we have released 0.17.0 for provider Azure. It contains a number of important bug fixes, the global poll interval flag from Daniel, and also a new managed resource for configuring PostgreSQL servers. And it's ready for consumption. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for getting that out there, Alper, and keeping all of us for keeping all these providers running as well too. So sweet. So we talked about Crossplane Core 1.4, 1.5 coming soon, or starting to work on that. All the providers, we've gotten some updates on those as well too. Any other notes on releases, milestones, priorities, roadmap, all that sort of stuff before we move to the next community topics? All right, let's talk about community topics then here. You know, a whole bunch of amazing content here and interesting talks, live streams, etc. Victor, do you want to? This is a lot of your content here, obviously. You're doing an amazing job with that. Any highlights that you want to share with the community about some of your recent live streams and other content?
I mean, nothing special, but there's so many things happened in the last week or two that, to be honest, I don't know anymore where I was and where I spoke at and stuff like that. The interesting thing, probably the CNCF, that was really cool. If I would need to select one, that would be CNCF and maybe the one with raw code. And there is CNCF next week as well. So two weeks, 2 CNCF events. So come and watch it.
That sounds awesome. Yeah, we'll make sure to tweet about that and get that out there. Is there Victor, I think I had asked this before, I don't know if you were around. Is there any, like the Twitch episodes for Cloud Native Foundation, they expire and they go away after like 30 days, 60 days, not a very long time. Is there something we could do to persist that or get that on our YouTube channel or something so it lasts longer?
If you get a copy, then yes, but I think that's enhanced on CNCF. I don't think that we can get it and post it ourselves. But I think that it was, I think that one was on YouTube as well.
Oh, so it might already
Maybe
be
I'm wrong.
on the CNCF's YouTube channel?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think you're
I'm
probably
90%
right
sure.
Got it. Yeah, okay, I should get a link to that as well too, instead of linking to Twitch. Good point, good point. Yeah, great. So yeah, some really great content there. I wanted to call out this one as well too. So the Open Core Summit, this is actually from 2019, I think. Bassam was a keynote speaker there and was speaking about the vision of the Crossplane project. And so we just recently uploaded it though to the Crossplane YouTube channel. And it's actually a really interesting insight into the longer term vision for a control plane centric approach to managing your infrastructure. So definitely check that out because it's quite an interesting talk. And it is from 2019, but it's very visionary and forward looking. So it's still quite applicable today as well too, if you haven't gotten a chance to see that one. Yep, so we'll keep that pattern going there of really amazing content and educational experiences for everybody. So incubation with the CNCF, the vote did complete on that one, and we got more than enough votes from the Technical Oversight Committee members to approve it. The official announcement.
Nobody said yay.
Yeah. Oh, people have been saying please yay for months now. So the official announcement though will be next week, and there will be many yays then. So Tuesday, September 14th, we expect to have blog posts with the CNCF and the Crossplane blog and some press and analysts and stuff like that too. So a big push will be next week to announce that more broadly across the ecosystem. But here in this more intimate group of Crossplane community members, that is the news that we're moving to incubation and we're announcing it on Tuesday. So I have this section here that folks can continue to add things to. It's intended for interesting conversations and adoption and just general things of note across the community that don't fit anywhere else. One thing I wanted to call out that I thought it was really interesting is that provider MindCTL or MindCuddle was started just recently. And so MindCTL is like a provisioning tool for hosting Minecraft servers. So the author of that chose to create a Crossplane provider that does that type of functionality of provisioning and managing like Minecraft servers. So I think this is super interesting adoption or scenario for Crossplane. So building kind of a platform to do this stuff for Minecraft. So I'm super interested to see where this goes. And the investment that gets made here. It's brand new and was just started, I think, last week. So there's going to be more of an investment in this, but Crossplane will be provisioning Minecraft stuff soon too. So that's definitely interesting. Anything else that folks remember? Good conversations with community members? Interesting questions that have come up on Slack or things of note there?
Hi, I just wanted to say one thing about the documentation. Like, I think there is quite often when we do search on Crossplane information on Google, just we always hit like a broken link. I wonder, like, when would that be fixed?
That is a really, really good question. So we have done a couple of things to explicitly address that. One of them is that we added some metadata information for robots, for crawlers, the indexers from Google, to say, do not follow these, don't index them, don't show them anymore. So those are across all of the pages that are no longer recent releases. Then we went a step further to go ahead and remove old releases so that only the currently supported releases are on the documentation site. And we went and requested with Google to re-index the site and remove all the stale stuff from their search results. Unfortunately, with Google there's no guarantee about when those get removed from the search results. So at this point, I personally don't have a good answer for how to continue to get those out of the search results or what we can do next, because we've taken 3 different steps and specifically made a request to Google to re-index them. So I definitely apologize for the hassle. You're not the first person who said that, and it is an annoying thing to continue to get those old results showing up. So I hope that Google's background indexing continues to make progress on that. And if more ideas come up that we have to improve that experience, we'll definitely take them. But yeah, sorry that's been a hassle recently, and we hope to improve on that still if we can make more progress on that.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Definitely appreciate that. Anything else that folks want to bring up today? All right, going once. All righty. Then if oh wait, hold on a second. Dan, is this oops, sorry, this PR here that I totally missed?
Yeah,
Bad.
it's not a huge thing per se, but I wanted to mention it because it is interesting for some folks, I think. And it's kind of in limbo a bit right now. So I thought I'd provide some context, and also if anyone else wants to weigh in, you're welcome to as well. So we fetch our packages from OCI image registries using either anonymous credentials if it's a public package, which a lot of ours are, or by using package pull secrets, where you explicitly create like a Docker credential secret and put in there and then reference that you want to use those. There's also the ability, right, when you're running on various providers, the ability to make use of Kubernetes credential providers. So this is what the kubelet uses to pull images, right? If you're running on like GKE and you have some GCR images or something like that. Go Container Registry, the library that we use to do all of our interaction with the registry. It has support for K8s credential providers. So basically, there's like a fork of the Kubernetes credential providers that an individual maintains and is bundled in, and you actually compile them in to your project rather than just include the library. So you'll actually see in our make file, and this is what this is changing, is that we're disabling compiling those in. The reason why is some of you may have noticed a few releases back when we used to get these like spurious logs that were from like Google and stuff saying, like failed to authenticate, and they didn't cause any issues, but they were kind of confusing. That was one reason. Then we also had a Crossplane user actually have this break their Crossplane installation because the Azure credentials provider had a bug in it where it didn't have a timeout on its context that it was passing for the HTTP request. They were running in a firewalled environment. So basically that request just hung forever. And so their reconciliation would eventually just time out on its context deadline. So anyway, we just went ahead and disabled this because it wasn't really a stated feature. At that time, I did fix the Azure credentials provider, so it will time out. But it still makes me a little uncomfortable with the fact that we kind of like attempt to do this credential authentication when we don't need to. So anyway, the long-term solution here is to fix upstream Go container registry, but we may opt to enable or disable this in the short term. You can kind of see my logic for it written down there. But I thought I'd bring this up. Didn't know, I haven't heard many people asking for this, to be honest. But we did have this individual who it actually needs it and was using it. And so just something to consider here. I'm probably going to see what the effort is to fix this in Go container registry or make it a little more ergonomic perhaps. And see if it's a ton of work, then maybe we'll go ahead and include this for now. If not, then I think that we'll probably go ahead and try to fix that before re-enabling this functionality. But if anyone has thoughts or any users are needing this functionality, feel free to weigh in. There's a corresponding issue that's linked as well.
Right. Awesome, Dan. Thanks for that, the update on that and get like background context as well too. Okay, sweet. So then now that's the end of the agenda items. I'm sorry for almost neglecting you, Dan. That would have been ever so rude of me. Okay, sweet. So doesn't sound like there was other topics that folks wanted to bring up. So I think we can go ahead and adjourn for the week. And you know, in between community meetings, we are quite active on slack.crossplane.io. So feel free to join us there and take the discussion there. And definitely thanks for everybody for joining in, and looking forward to another couple of weeks of progress here together.
Thanks, Jared.
All right, see you, everybody.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Yeah.